Hi, my name is Megan Campbell, and this is Estrella. You're going to see Paranel wandering in every now and then, too. And welcome to our very first Sit Down Sunday. So this is a new series I'm starting. Big tough dog. This is a new series I'm starting where it's just you and me and a couple of dogs, and we're going to sit down and tell some stories about alcohol. So I figured for this very first one, and I'm from Turquoise Sky Custom Spirits. I don't know if I said that. But I figured for this very first one, I would tell one of my favorite stories, which is about absinthe and how it came to be banned and why 120 years later, I still have people asking me, every other month, like, hey, are you going to make absinthe? Are you going to do absinthe? We're all going to get kind of psychedelic and whatever and stuff like that. So, So the very first thing is the misconceptions. I literally get people all the time who are like, yeah, absinthe and tripping and this, like, absinthe does not make you hallucinate. It doesn't, it never has, it never will. That's just completely straight up fabricated. And let's talk about how and why that was fabricated. So where did that come from? So absinthe contains wormwood, which is just a flavoring ingredient. It's like anise, it's like nutmeg, it's just like a piece of wood that you put in something to give it flavor. And inside that wormwood is a chemical called thujum. Hey, come back here. He's a little thief. Stealing stuff, not hanging out with me. That's rude. Paranel! Oh, yeah. Wow, she can take her mouth off of her. Alright, so absinthe contains wormwood, which contains thujum. Hey, no, calm down. Which does have hallucinogenic properties. It's also like super toxic, so you'll die from the toxicity before you ever get. Knock it off. No, I'll lock you out. No. So you'll die from the toxicity before you ever get any of the nice, fun hallucinogenic effects. And there were these scientists, and they basically went, okay, they took a bunch of powdered thujum, and they, rolled a mouse in it. You two are killing me. You are killing me. They, rolled a mouse in this powdered thujum, and when the mouse freaked out and died, they were like, oh my god, look at what absinthe does to you! Which is pretty much the same as if you, rolled a raccoon in straight caffeine powder, and then went, oh my god, this is what iced tea does to you. It's crazy. It's the parts per million is insane. It just doesn't make any sense. So, they basically lied. They lied. It was bad science all around. Now, why would they do something like that? Well, they had an agenda. I know, crazy. Scientists having an agenda with their published results. So, they had this agenda. They were like, okay, there's two sort of pressures on them right now. There's the prohibition, the teetotalers, the pressure from them, and then there's the wine makers. So let's start with the teetotalers. They're pretty easy. They want to ban something. And absinthe is a great target. There's already this kind of negative energy about absinthe. It's something for poor people. Which, by the way, if you're looking at, pre-1980, everything except cognac is, a poor person's drink. So, there you come over here. Come over here. There you go. There you go. So, it's a poor person's drink. It's already got this, negative energy, and now there's the scientific report. No. Go away. Go away. And now there's a scientific report that says, oh, it makes you crazy. And so they're like, okay, if we can get absinthe banned, that's precedence. Because nobody's ever banned alcohol before. Nobody's ever really tried to control what you can and can't drink before. Just what you can and can't call the stuff you make. So, that's their angle. They're like, okay, this is a target. Alright, so in order to talk about the wine industry angle, we've got to talk some botany, we've got to talk about some tiny bugs, we've got to talk about some history. So basically, there's two main divergences in wine. We all know the different varietals of wine grape, and It's like Chardonnay and Cabernet. Well, those are all basically the same plant. That's the European wine grapes. And then there's, come here. And then there's American wine grapes. Now, American wine grapes are generally regarded as disgusting because Native Americans didn't cultivate grapes. They were just a fruit that was somewhere and birds ate what they liked and that was how things spread. So they're gross. And so people came over to America and they start trying to cultivate these grapes, and European wine grapes just straight died over here. They're like, oh man, environments, right? And so after a while, they're like working on American grapes, and they give a gift of American grapevines to France. And they're like, hey, we've been working on making this better. Here's a little present from us to you. We're crazy about you, France. And all the French wine grapes start dying. Like, all of them. Everywhere. And obviously France is not that far from everybody else, so they start dying too. And the whole wine industry is in turmoil. And they pretty much, they're decimated. And it turns out that there's this tiny little bug called Phylloxera, something like that. And it eats... It lives on the roots of wine plants. And the American wine plants are used to that. They're very sturdy, they're very tough roots. But European wine plants didn't have any of that sturdiness. They had no defenses against this new bug. And so they were dying. Like, literally 10% of the wine industry was left at the end, maybe. And in this time, absinthe had come up as like this new, exciting, fun thing that people wanted to drink. And so the wine industry, eventually, they figured out about the little bugs, and they figured out that they can graft their old, tasty wine tops onto these really sturdy wine bottoms, and that's how they would save the wine industry. And they did, and it worked, and obviously we have a wine industry now, so it worked okay. But then they're like sitting there, and they're like, okay, cool, we have wine again, like everything will go back to the way it was before, and it wasn't. People were still drinking absinthe. It was still like the hot thing. So they were like, hey, we gotta get rid of this. This is great. We can't compete with absinthe, you know? So they had skin in the game, and that's where the real, like, money came for this whole, like, campaign of putting it out there. So basically, the wine industry and the prohibition groups were like, hey, oh man, this is crazy, like, did you hear that this happened, and did you hear that this guy killed his whole family, and he was drinking absinthe, and he was going crazy, and it made it into the media, and the media was like, oh my god, look at this thing, people are going crazy, people are hallucinating and murdering their whole family, which is like a real story, except the guy was also like drinking wine and doing drugs, and everyone agreed that like the baby wasn't his, and there was a lot of trouble at home, and it's like, okay, that happens every day, so that's, like, that wasn't absinthe. But it was just this whole, like, everything was blamed on absinthe. Everything bad that happened in France was blamed on absinthe for, like, 5 years. And then eventually and this is all happening, you know, between 1905 and 1915, eventually the United States is like, oh man, you see all this stuff that's going on in France? We can't have that. So they ban absinthe. And then France bans absinthe, and then the US bans all alcohol. We started prohibition. And, you know, the US gets a bad rep for like, oh man, look at all these prohibitionists, and look at how stupid they were and how bad that worked out for them. But, like, everybody was on board with this. Like, everyone, there were prohibition groups across the world, and then they saw what happened in the United States, and they were like, oh, we're not gonna do that. That did not work very well. So they found there other ways to curb the enthusiasm for alcohol in their home countries. But America gets a bad rep. We started prohibition. It went super well for everybody involved. And then when we ended prohibition, absinthe was still banned because it wasn't part of prohibition. It was like this separate, like, law that had been passed banning absinthe. So whatever. Basically, it spends a long time banned, but nobody really cares because we're doing other stuff, couple of wars, couple of, complete paradigm shifts in how people live their lives. And then eventually this guy in France in 2003 is like, hey, it's illegal to sell absinthe in France, but it's not illegal to make absinthe in France. So he gets approval to start making absinthe and selling it outside of France. Well, there's this little loophole where when France joined the European Union in 1999, they have to specify which laws are like, hey, here's the main pool of laws, and then here's our own pool of laws that we care about. And they had to specify which ones they cared about, and they didn't put the absinthe thing in there because nobody was thinking about absinthe. And so technically, as of 1999, you could have, argued that you could buy and sell absinthe in France. But he ended up finding another loophole where it was like, hey, this is liqueur made with absinthe plants. And they were like, yeah, okay, you can sell that, which is really just typical of the alcohol industry. And then eventually they were like, okay, well, you can sell it if it has less than, 10 parts per million or per billion or something like that. Which I think, and the US did the same thing in 2011. And I think that's really just them trying to, make themselves feel better about ever banning it to begin with, because it's seriously, nothing. People picture infusions, and I think they picture, like the cherry jar full of moonshine, and, that's how you make an infusion. No. When you're dealing with wormwood, you're dealing with, the scrapings, when you do nutmeg and you, scrape it and there's, a little bit on your, hot cocoa or whatever, that's how much you're talking about is your infusion, and then you pull it out when it's done flavoring. It's just crazy. They're just trying to make themselves feel better. Nobody wants to put that much wormwood in the things anyway. It was only ever secondary flavor. Alright, so thanks for hanging out with me. Thanks for watching. And like I said, my name is Megan Campbell. I'm from Turquoise Sky Custom Spirits. You can check us out in downtown Phoenix. We're right across the street from Chase Field. So if you're in the area for a ball game or a basketball game or a concert or whatever, come in, have a flight, have a drink, whatever. And yeah, and we do custom vodka and bourbon, your own flavor inside the bottle, your own label outside the bottle. It is 100% custom, minimum of 24 bottles, which if you've ever tried to look this thing up before, you know that the next guy his minimum is 10,000 bottles. So check us out. Great for weddings, great for events, great for gifts, great for closing gifts, great for pretty much anything that you would have went out and got a couple bottles for anyway. So, thanks for having me out. Have a great Sunday. Enjoy your football, and I will see you next Sunday.